So, folks, I was minding my own business in I currently have a fever of over 100 degrees. I was laying in bed earlier today and scrolling through my phone and wishing for death. And instead of finding death, I found uh, a short clip of a man supposedly granted access to the El Salvadoran prison system in order to make propaganda glazing El Salvador's prisons. And I found this absolutely fascinating for a whole host of reasons. And I think that it's worth doing a bit of a deep dive into this. Okay. Now, the man I'm talking about is named Nick Shirley. A man with two first names. Make up your mind, Nick. And, well, I just want to share with you all the banner image he has on his channel, which is subscribe for the truth. And there's just something so bare bones and basic about this that I was really surprised when I found out that this guy has almost 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I have never heard of him before and decided it's time for us to do a dive. What kind of a man, presumably with the invitation of the El Salvadoran government, which is, as we know, a dictatorship, invited to go to El Salvador in order to talk about the incredible innovations within the El Salvadoran prison system. Now, to remind you all, Nayib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador, is an authoritarian dictator. He came to power after making a bunch of shady deals with various criminal gangs in El Salvador. And he then proceeded to arrest something like 2 or 3% of the entire population of El Salvador. It's a lot of people in the United States if you were proportional to how many people are locked up in El Salvador to the population of the United States, it would have something like 3 times the US's current prison population, and we are currently the world's leaders in imprisoning folks. So I, of course, was very interested to see what Nick Shirley was all about here, and I managed to track down his YouTube channel. And, well, so interesting. He was given exclusive White House access here. He's now in the White House press pool, I guess. Migrants have taken Ireland. Here he is doing on-the-street interviews with people he claims are mentally unstable and will push him in front of the tracks. It's very interesting stuff, to say the least. But here we get, and of course, he's glazing Israel for massacring, the people of Palestine. Super cool stuff. But this is the video I'm interested in here. It has 2.3 million views. And the thumbnail of it is, "This prison will change history." And I, for one, am very interested to learn about the inner workings of Nayib Bukele's prison system. Let's take a look together, shall we?
This was an El Salvador prison, and this is one now. How does a prison go from being gang-controlled to now a prison where the prisoners themselves are helping to rebuild the country of El Salvador? Today, I am taking you inside of the world's most unconventional and most productive prison in the entire world.
Some of these prisoners you will meet inside of this video will become future engineers, construction workers, carpenters, farmers. These prisoners are quite literally helping to build a better El Salvador. This is all because of President Nayib Bukele's plan called Plan Cero Ocio, which translates to Plan of No Leisure.
I really want to emphasize that we are 30 seconds into this video, and it is already very apparent what this is. This is a YouTuber discovering prison slave labor. And he just thinks it's the bee's knees. That's right, folks. This man was invited, and I know I keep using the word man, even though he looks like he's 12. He was invited to do a propaganda piece for an authoritarian government to talk about the wonders of prison slave labor. Now, to relate it to what we have been talking about with CCOT, folks, I don't know if this is CCOT. I don't believe that this prison in particular is CCOT, and you know that because, well, for example, these prisoners actually see the outdoors. In CCOT, they never see outside. But also, we know that the prisoners in CCOT are slated to become prison slaves. That's the entire purpose here. And throughout this video, I'm going to continue to talk about the nuances and various exploitations involved in prison slavery, because that's what this is. If you are saying, oh, well, we're imprisoning you for 20 years, but if you work hard, we'll only imprison you for 10 years, that's still prison slavery. That you aren't giving them anything. You are creating an incentive for the judicial system to lock people away for longer and longer periods of time in order to exploit their labor. That's what is happening here.
Prisoners are typically locked away inside of a prison cell serving their time. The prisoners here in El Salvador are working 24/7 to help build a better El Salvador.
Huh, they're working 24/7, you say? That sounds like slavery, man. Are you not hearing what you're saying?
El Salvador has gone through a drastic change over the past few years, from being the most dangerous country in the world to now the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. I'm going to show you guys a large reason why. We'll be starting off this video going inside of this prison here, and then we'll be going to another prison where nobody has ever actually gone into before. I will be the first person to ever receive access to go to where we're going today. Make sure you guys give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on a mission to get to 500,000 subscribers as of right now. And now let's go inside of the prison. Here we go. Let's do this.
Just real quick here, just a interesting point of note. Let me pull this up. Here is a piece from Foreign Policy. The problem with El Salvador's crime numbers. Bukele's government has been undercounting homicides since its 2022 crackdown. Almost like it's not actually the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. They're just numbers made up by a dictator. Almost like that. This article, by the way, a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School and a former commander in the U.S. Army Special Forces. And just, again, this is what it's like in those prisons. You cannot tell me that, like, oh, these people aren't slaves when they're literally being forced to huddle, like, naked and shirtless next to each other under the watchful eye of riot cops. Jesus. In less than a decade, El Salvador has gone from the murder capital of the world to having one of the lowest homicide rates in the Western Hemisphere. President Nayib Bukele has been at the helm of this radical transformation. Since taking office, he has led one of the most aggressive anti-gang crackdowns ever seen, suspended key constitutional rights, oh wow, that's crazy, reshaped the judiciary, eroded prosecutorial independence, and consolidated unprecedented political power in the process. And just gonna really focus on these three things here. It kind of seems like if you're talking about the virtues of prison labor, one might also want to take a look at, whether or not key constitutional rights are respected, how the judiciary works, and how prosecution works in the country, because that determines who gets put into the prisons to do the labor that you are saying is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Just saying, might be worth pointing out and like figuring this stuff out. And yes, it's true. This child is not that bright, right? This child is not that bright. However, in the conservative media ecosystem, being a complete and utter moron is an asset rather than a detriment. The dumber you are, the better you do, because the more you just regurgitate that propaganda. And that's why people pay you the big bucks if you are in the conservative media ecosystem. Oddly enough, here on the left, people don't just pay you big bucks to say bullshit. Okay? Let's see. He's done this all with overwhelming support, despite being widely criticized by Salvadoran civil society organizations and international human rights groups. He received more than 84% of the vote in his re-election in February, and support for his measures have polled as high as 92%. In Latin America, Bukele has a higher popularity rating than any leader, including the Pope. In June, Bukele was inaugurated president for an unprecedented and many argue unconstitutional second term. At his inauguration, dressed in an elegant embroidered suit reminiscent of the military uniform worn by the country's revered former president, Gerardo Barrios, he proclaimed, "We are now the safest country in the Western Hemisphere." It is a line that he uses often. Bukele's narrative is straightforward. El Salvador was a sick nation beleaguered for decades by gangs, violence, and corrupt politicians. But now that the country is taking its bitter medicine, it is finally safe. Now politicians throughout the region are increasingly looking to Bukele's approach as a guide for combating violence and insecurity in their own countries. In Honduras, President Xiomara Castro declared her own state of exception, which has suspended numerous constitutional guarantees and dramatically increased the role of the military in public security. In Ecuador, President Daniel Noboa announced the construction of 2 maximum security prisons designed by the same company behind El Salvador's notorious mega prison. For all the Bukele lovers, Noboa joked, "It's the same jail." Man, if only someone would look into the same company. I wonder if that's important at all. Data from the Salvadoran government indeed suggests that violence has plummeted to historic lows under Bukele. A closer look at the data and methods used by his administration, however, reveals a more complicated reality of violence, state control, and repression in the country. And let's take a look. In both 2015 and 2016, El Salvador recorded more homicides than any other country in the world. At its peak in 2015, the country had a homicide rate of 105 per 100,000 people. By the end of the presidency of Salvador Sanchez Cerén, and in the wake of a 2016 gang non-aggression pact, the murder rate had fallen to just 53 people per 100,000. In 2019, Bukele ascended to the presidency on a populist anti-establishment platform that focused on social renewal and made little mention of iron-fisted crime policies. Almost immediately, he began a 3-year period of secret gang negotiations and diplomacy, which saw the homicide rate fall to just 18 people per 100,000 in 2021. After a weekend of heightened gang violence in March of 2022, Bukele, with the support of the legislature, launched the dramatic crackdown known as the Régimen d'Exception, which suspended several basic constitutional rights and was followed by aggressive criminal reforms. The provisional 30-day Régimen d'Exception has become increasingly permanent, having now been extended a total of 28 times. And in 2023, the country's reported homicide rate plunged to just 2.4 people per 100,000. However, under Bukele's crackdown, the government has been undercounting homicides by as much as 47%. This is no bureaucratic or clerical error. Since taking office, Bukele's administration has been laser focused on reducing homicide rates and improving perceptions of security. And really pay attention there, improving perceptions of security, not security itself. This was central to his administration's negotiations with the gangs from 2019 to 2022. The government offered incarcerated gang leadership less restrictive prison conditions, reduced sentences, visits to civilian hospitals, often to communicate with fellow gang members under the guise of receiving fake medical treatment, and a promise to not extradite them to the United States. In exchange, the gangs needed to find ways to lower the number of homicides. One of the ways in which gang leaders achieved this was to authorize fewer killings and genuinely reduce violence. However, they also increased the practice of burying the bodies of victims in unmarked or often mass graves, in effect reducing the number of public killings. According to a 2022 U.S. federal indictment during the negotiations, MS-13 leaders continued to authorize murders where the victims' bodies were buried or otherwise hidden. And just pointing out there, again, how full of horse shit the Trump administration is. How full of horseshit they are about wanting to crack down on MS-13, on Tren de Aragua. They don't care about the gang violence. God. A dictator using propaganda. And, I feel like I shouldn't have to point this out when we're talking about an authoritarian dictator whose numbers are suspiciously good. Like, that should already raise red flags. Genuinely and completely, okay? In May of 2021, Bukele's government formally started changing how it counted homicides. Mesa Technica, an interagency roundtable that tabulates homicides, began excluding the discovery of clandestine or unmarked graves from its counts. And, you have to, a tip of the hat, because it takes a certain amount of devilish creativity to say, look, homicides are different from people we find in mass graves. If you take out all of the mass graves we've been discovering, our numbers look pretty good. It's crazy. In a country ravished by a 12-year civil war that ended in the 1990s, discoveries of mass graves and unidentified human remains are an all too common occurrence. And for as long as the government had been recording homicide data, these deaths had been included. Marvin Reyes, the leader of the Salvadoran National Police Union, told Foreign Policy that as the homicide numbers were dropping during Bukele's first years in office, we began to find more unmarked and clandestine graves where the gangs would bury their victims. Since the start of 2021, at least 171 unmarked graves have been discovered. 68 in 2021, 43 in 2022, 60 in 2023, and entirely left out of the nation's homicide figures. That's so weird. It's so weird. Then in April of 2022, just days after Bukele declared the Régimen d'Exception, the government began excluding figures for persons killed in clashes with the police or military, which include shootings, patrols, operations by state security forces. El Salvador's National Civil Police refers to these incidents as illegitimate aggressions or legal interventions, which therefore fall outside the realm of intentional homicide. So, as long as the police do it, they're not getting murdered if the police are doing it. It's fine. Don't look into the police numbers. Those don't count as murders. They don't count as homicides. They don't count as killings. If we take out all the people our police murder, then our numbers look pretty good. Again, devils in human flesh. For context, in the United States, these killings are also counted separately and are called willful or justifiable homicides. If you were to count people killed by police in the United States in 2022 as official homicides, the national homicide rate would go up by 6%. That's fucking huge. Jesus Christ. In El Salvador, the inclusion of these killings in the data would increase the homicide rate by 19% in 2022 and 20% in 2023. Because the police, I guess, in El Salvador just love killing. Cool stuff. Where El Salvador has become a true leader, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but globally, is incarceration. Under Bukele's rule, El Salvador has become the most incarcerated country in the world. As a result of arbitrary detentions, prolonged sentences, and mass trials, 1.6% of the Salvadoran population is now behind bars, more than twice the incarceration rate of Cuba and Rwanda, and more than 4 times that of the United States. As it happens, the last type of homicide that is now omitted from the Salvadoran government's data is murders that occur in prisons. It's unclear precisely when the government stopped including these figures in the official counts, but data from government records and civil society organizations indicate that homicides in prison have increased dramatically under the Régimen d'Exception. During Bukele's first 2 years in office, only 16 people died from homicide while under prison custody, and homicides accounted for just 8% of total prison deaths. Since then, the number of homicides in prisons has skyrocketed. Detailed data from Socorro Jurídico Humanitario, a nonprofit legal aid organization, indicates that In the 2 years since the crackdown has launched, 91 people have been killed in prison, meaning that homicide is now the leading cause of death in the prison system today. And again, that's a whole lot of categories to start just excluding from your national murder rates, your national rate of people being killed. That's crazy. Again, this is authoritarian propaganda. And I just really wanted to emphasize that before we get too deep into this, because this video by Nick Shirley is dripping in the propaganda.
Entered into the first of the 2 prisons we will be going inside for this video. Throughout the video, the intensity and the production of the prisons will increase as there are phases to the prison systems here, and be ready for some things you would never expect to see inside of a prison. Now it was time to go meet the warden who will be guiding us throughout the first prison, La Esperanza.
And what's it like in here?
Aquí el día a día es trabajo en los diferentes talleres que tenemos dentro del centro penal. Y aprendizaje, o sea, aprender, cosas nuevas, cosas que les permitan cuando salgan.
Oh, it betters them.
Thanks for the call to action earlier today. Put in a comment and got my friends to do so too. Got 8 from us. BWA.
Heck yeah, Fallen Hearts, let's go! Get your friends to also share the call to action around as well, if they haven't already. But thank you so much for the $10 dono, and thank you for doing something. But yeah, like basically they're trying to frame this as like, oh, we're helping them build up skills they'll need when they get out of prison to not be in organized crime. We're battering them by forcing them to work for lighter sentences.
Salgan en libertad, poderse desempeñar afuera.
And what's the difference between the prisoners here inside of this prison versus the prisoners that are inside SECAC?
La diferencia es que los que tenemos.
Keep in mind, this is from 2 months ago. This is, I believe, prior to when we began talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia and CCOT in the more general mainstream sense. This guy, the difference is here we have common criminals, and they're the worst of the worst, as determined by.
Tenemos aquí son internos comunes o han sido colaboradores de forma obligada por las pandillas. No tenemos pandilleros activos aquí. Todos los pandilleros activos fueron sacados de este centro penal y llevados al SECOT.
If you do not know what SECOT is, it is a maximum security prison here in El Salvador where the most dangerous gangsters.
Like, I'm sorry, how do you incorporate this? How do you incorporate this into your video? And you think, yeah, the guards with the beating sticks out are the bad guys. Not all of these people being forced to shove their genitals into each other's asses while shirtless. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy. How do you incorporate this footage and not realize you are a ghoul of the highest order?
Go to live the rest of their lives without ever seeing the light of sun again. However, in this prison, it is completely different.
And so what kind of crime did someone have to commit to be inside of one of these prisons?
Aquí tenemos todo tipo de delito, pero los más comunes son violaciones.
You know, like, I'm sorry, but like there is an element here where I'm just like, kids like this guy, you know, and I say kid because, again, he looks like an overgrown 12-year-old. But Nick Shirley has a special place in hell reserved for him and people like him who willingly get up every day and do like Joseph Goebbels level propaganda to get views. It's crazy. It's genuinely crazy. It's not even like to adhere to like the government propaganda line, because if you don't, you're going to be killed or your family's going to be disappeared or something. This guy gets up every day and he's like, time to rise and grind, got to get those numbers up. And like that's what motivates him to do this, you know?
Robos, estafas, ese tipo de delitos es lo más común acá.
And how long can somebody be in one of these prisons for? ¿Por cuánto tiempo es el máximo tiempo que uno puede estar aquí?
Hay internos que están condenados para más de 100 años.
I'm sorry.
¿Tiempo es el máximo tiempo que uno puede estar aquí?
Hay internos que están condenados.
Some prisoners have 100+ year sentences. Like, How do you not connect that to the prison labor, the forced prison labor? How do you not do that?
Condenados para más de 100 años.
Everybody you're seeing inside this video that are not police officers or have
Can I just say, like, how do you not linger on that? How do you not linger? You get that answer. How do you not, like, linger on that? Have any follow-up questions on that? That's crazy.
a camera inside their hand are all prisoners that are then being put to work. Plan cero ocio literally means plan of no leisure. These prisoners are being put to work 24/7. If they're not eating or sleeping, they're either studying or working here inside El Salvador.
Does that not strike you as shockingly similar to slave labor conditions in the United States? Have you never cracked open a history book?
So they're prisoners. Ellos son.
Sí, ellos son privados de libertad también, que saben sobre construcción y ahorita están reparando lo que es el piso del parqueo.
And how many people are here inside this prison?
27.800 personas privadas de libertad dentro de estos recintos.
And because these prisoners are always occupied, we entered into the first classroom where they were learning about medical procedures.
We have one classroom right here, and then right next door, there's another classroom as well, and these guys are also learning. And so there's literally no leisure inside of the prison.
No tenemos socio. Todo el mundo debe estar ocupado en alguna actividad.
And what's the youngest person and what's the oldest person inside of the jail here?
Tenemos desde los 18 años hasta los 59 años.
Who's the professors? ¿Quién son los profesores?
Son los mismos internos, pero son internos que tienen son médicos o tienen.
So we force the inmates that know about stuff in order to teach the other inmates about said stuff, but we don't, like, they might not be actual professors. They just, guys we figure know things about things. That's crazy. You see that's insane, right? This is like I have no words. Like, this is insane. How can they study if they work 24/7? Because the studying is part of their work.
Formación relacionada.
Even the teachers that are teaching these classes are also prisoners that were once somehow educated enough inside of the field that they're currently teaching in to teach an entire classroom. So this prison is becoming completely autosufficient in how they teach, how they learn, and how they're able to go about their business.
Did you just say that autosufficient? Do you mean self-sufficient? Why are you presenting this like it's a good thing? Again, do you guys not see the perverse incentive structure here where, like, if you are relying on having, like, educated professors in this prison, that it would encourage the arrest
I
of
want to go rip my local representative
professors?
a new one for failing to call out Israel and for not protecting his constituents who call out the ongoing genocide.
Go get him, Saki Tanuki. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Auto means self, so I'm sorry, I've never heard anyone refer to auto-sufficient. I have never heard anyone use that turn of phrase. The phrase is self-sufficient. Like, we can get into pedantry if you want. I don't think you're going to like how I react to pedantry today.
Here with everything that they do. Right here, they're doing a practice here. You can see they have a person on a stretcher. They're doing a practice so that way these people are learning how to become medics if needed eventually.
1, 2, 3.
And right now they're undergoing practice. For example, right now, this is a CPR practice they are doing. And they have even Gangman style on the back right now.
1, 2.
Oh man, they have Gangnam Style? Wow, they really have everything. What a paradise of prison labor conditions.
3, 4, 5.
¿Estás vivo?
Bien, todo bien.
Right now they're doing a medical course, and so that was part of the practice was a CPR test. And I think everybody passed. Todos pasaron, ¿cierto?
Claro que sí, ese es el objetivo, enseñarles a salvar vidas y prevenir lesiones.
And before you were here inside of this prison, were you also in the medical field?
Sí, ambos somos médicos, vemos 3 médicos, enfermeros a cargo del programa de promotores de salud.
Wait, they're not using dummies? No, of course they're not. Do you think they give a shit if these people get cracked ribs? Like, they don't give a shit if these people get murdered in jail by their fellow inmates. They don't give a shit if, like, you collapse someone's sternum. They don't care.
And how long have you been inside of this jail for?
2 años con 2 meses.
¿Y cuánto tiempo estará?
6 años.
6 años. ¿Y qué hizo?
Droga.
And now inside of this classroom, they're learning about chemistry here. Inside of each classroom, there's a biometric thing right here that scans each person as they walk into the classroom to make sure they are authorized to come in and that they're not missing any classes. They even keep track of who comes to class and who doesn't. There's absolutely no ditching here inside of the prison. And what was it like here inside El Salvador and in the prison systems here in El Salvador?
God, thanks. I hate it. More reasons we should mobilize to protect our personal data, by the way. Just as an FYI. Also, fun fact, did you guys know you can opt out of facial scanning at the hands of TSA? You just say, no thank you, I'd like to opt out. You have that right, just to let you guys know.
Salvador before Nayib Bukele became president.
Antes en este centro penal, lo que ustedes veían en estos muros eran grafitis de pandilla. Era un tráfico increíble de ilícitos, traficaban drogas, traficaban objetos prohibidos dentro del centro penal. Habían bandas que se disputaban aquí adentro del complejo, el control, la venta de drogas. Que en este centro penal hubo muchas masacres, porque las bandas formadas aquí en el interior se disputaban entre ellos el control de los sectores para el tráfico de ilícitos.
Is it true that they used to be able to bring in prostitutes and bring in other women and be able to control their gang operations?
Like, can I just say real quick how insane it is that this guy is afraid of saying the word prostitute in his video, but he's perfectly fine repping and like whitewashing like prison slave labor? That's insane, right? Also, again, as we learned previously, there are still way more murders. There are way more murders today inside of El Salvador's prisons than there were prior to Nayib Bukele. They just don't report them as murders.
Inside of this jail before Nayib Bukele?
Sí, antes que se implementara el plan cero ocio, de aquí salían órdenes para cometer delitos fuera de la prisión, porque muchos de los líderes de pandillas o líderes de bandas estaban dentro de las cárceles, pero tenían comunicación con el exterior. Entonces por eso el país no era seguro, porque desde las cárceles mandaban órdenes para cometer delitos.
Now we are in Sector 3 of this prison. We are in the construction zone. Even the prisoners helped build this section so that way they could learn. Everything you're seeing from the ceilings to the poles, they've all constructed here.
Yeah. They're building parts of the prison so that they can learn. You know, the same way a lot of the same way a lot of those concentration camps during World War II were built with forced labor, so that all of those that were incarcerated into the concentration camps could learn and build skills. It was very important to the Nazi regime to build up those skill sets. You understand, right? Like how insane this glazing is. Anyone with like an actual soul should find this abhorrent, okay? The fact that people can watch this and be like, "Oh yes, yeah, no, this is good, this is fine." What the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah, look, when you dig your own grave, you're just building character.
Inside of the prison by the prisoners themselves here. Every single person you're seeing right now inside this video, they're obviously all prisoners. Even the instructors themselves are teaching the prisoners a new skill. The instructors themselves are also prisoners. And once these prisoners are then let out into society, they have a new skill they can then use to go get a new job and to help transform.
Just want to really go back a little bit here. Like, how long ago was this? It was 3 minutes ago or 4 minutes ago in the video.
Hay internos que están condenados.
Some prisoners have 100+ year sentences.
What exactly was wrong with the previous organizations? INS seemed perfectly capable before CBP, and airport security pre-TSA was fine. TSA still fails audits.
It's all security theater. That's all it is, Sake Tanuki. The concept of making a theater performance out of security was popularized, and that's where we get ICE. That's where we get TSA. It is performance. It is there to make people feel safe when they weren't feeling safe prior. You know? Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs, though. I really appreciate it. Some prisoners have 100+ year sentences, but yeah, I'm sure they'll find these construction jobs help them with their resume.
New job and to help transform and rebuild the country of El Salvador. El Salvador is trying to become a first world country. Right here you can see the instructor who is
also they keep going between having subtitles and not having subtitles, which is bizarre, but okay.
Also a prisoner himself, teaching these prisoners a new skill. For instance, this looks like a section where they're learning how to do plumbing. They have the toilet seat right here. They have all the plumbing down here, and each and every single one of these parts has a name to it. And they have an instructor right here who's teaching these guys how to do plumbing here. ¿Qué está construyendo? What are you guys building?
Estamos aprendiendo fontanería.
¿Te gusta estar aquí aprendiendo todos los días?
La verdad sí, me gusta bastante, porque antes no podía y hoy sí ya puedo. He aprendido gracias al presidente.
What's your favorite skill that you've learned here inside of the prison?
He aprendido a controlar mis emociones, muchas cosas, he aprendido bastantes cosas.
Hey, and do you want to work inside?
Can I just throw out there that, like, a prisoner telling you that they've learned to control their emotions, to me, in an authoritarian prison camp like this, indicates to me that, like, if you lose control of your emotions, they beat you. You know, like, that's... I don't think that this guy is getting therapy in prison, guys.
Construction once you leave this prison?
Sí, la verdad sí, me gusta bastante.
Like, do you guys genuinely think that these people are free to give their genuine ideas and thoughts? Like, if they say something critical of the government that put them into prison, they could be disappeared. They could be killed. They could be, I would say a murder statistic, but let's be real, they would put them in a mass grave and not call it a murder.
He aprendido bastante, lo cual antes lo tenía de menos, hoy veo que es un buen trabajo.
And inside of a prison, you would never expect to see something like this. The prisoners inside here have saws, they're working with their hands, and they're learning new skills. And they're also gaining 2 days back in their life.
Can I just really, this is really ridiculously unsafe.
Have saws, they're working with their hands, and they're learning new skills. And they're also gaining 2 days back in their life as each single day that they work inside of here. And they are then reimbursed 2 days of the time of their sentencing. So what are you teaching your fellow inmates here?
Estoy enseñando aquí cómo poder hacer columnas de la manera segura para que su base sea siempre el mismo perfil de arriba.
And what did you do for work before you were then charged with crime and sent to this prison?
Y antes de que yo viniera aquí al penal, pues mi trabajo allá afuera, mi profesión es construcción general.
It's very cool that they're using the prisoners inside of the prison to help other prisoners learn new skills.
It's so, yeah, man, it's so cool that they're using prisoners to teach other prisoners. And again, just really need to emphasize, it kind of seems like this would create a perverse incentive structure by which the government would go and arrest people with the skill sets they want to teach inside of their prisons, and then charge them with whatever they feel like in order to put them into prison and abuse them for their labor. That seems like a thing you're doing here. That seems like what this is. This is so fucking staged. Absolutely it is. This guy has apparently been glazing Nayib Bukele and the El Salvadoran government for years at this point. That they invited him for this entire stage demonstration. It's crazy.
You can tell this guy right here is passionate, and he's teaching with passion, and it actually helps these prisoners become leaders as well, as when they leave here, they are then going to know how to direct and conduct meetings.
Oh yeah, the number one thing prisons want to teach prisoners, how to be good leaders. Cool.
Such as this, and teach other people new skills. Because imagine if you're given a 10-year sentence and you have to sit there and grieve, wondering and pondering about what you could be doing, but instead inside these prisons, they're putting these people to work, helping them learn new skills, eventually going to make them a better person. So that way
you know, there's a big there's a big difference between a prison that offers like educational opportunities where people can like get their GED, can get their, university degrees even. Like there's a big difference between a prison that offers those opportunities and a prison that forces people to go to construction class so that they can build more of the prison. There's a big difference between, hey, everyone, you have to, otherwise we're going to beat you or kill you or give you more jail time. If you don't comply, if you don't go to class, we're going to do those things. You can look into prisons that do everything that this guy is this guy is like, oh man, look at how great the educational opportunities are. We have prisons that focus on reducing recidivism rates in like the Nordic countries. They have a very successful prison system that reduces the rate at which people recommit their crimes. And the reason those prisons are successful is because they offer those educational opportunities, because they offer, leisure activities, because they are not, designed to torture the people inside. They are built under the belief that simply restricting someone from operating in the wider world is punishment enough, and that the rest is just building up the skills, both mental, physical, emotional, that they are going to need once they get out. And that is a really successful program. You can look those up. We've talked about them on stream before. Forcing people to do labor is not one of the ways you reduce the recidivism rate.
When they get back into society, they'll know what they did wrong, but they're going to be leaving with a new skill to help society. Something so simple as this car was also welded here inside of this prison, so everything they do inside this prison comes from the prison itself, making this prison completely self-sufficient in a lot of ways.
See, now he uses self-sufficient.
What's something cool that you've seen or experienced from working inside this prison?
What's something cool you've seen in prison warden?
Muchos han conseguido empleo, ya han salido libres y hay empresas que les han ofrecido empleo. Algunos ya están trabajando.
And does that make you feel good knowing that what you're doing here is helping rehabilitate these prisoners and then
This is a man in charge of imprisoning 27,000 people. How are you framing this as like him being the good guy? You don't even know why most of these people are in prison. You asked like one guy. And you took this guy's word that the government is just doing everything perfectly. That all of these people have had fair trials. And from what I know of the El Salvadoran prison system, that is not the case at all.
Also improve the country as well.
Eso le da un sentido a lo que nosotros hacemos. O sea, ahí el objetivo ha sido cumplido, que es darles una herramienta a ellos, darles una ventaja para que puedan incorporarse a la sociedad después de salir acá. O sea, que su tiempo en prisión no haya sido un tiempo perdido, sino que lo han ocupado para formarse, para aprender cosas que les van a servir ya estando en libertad.
From the construction zone, we head upstairs to where they have an actual university. Yes, you heard that right. Here inside of a prison, they have a university.
The classes where we were at before, where they're doing a CPR test, were pre-courses to enter into what is the university of this prison. Literally here inside of the university, these prisoners can receive a college degree. This is the director of the university here inside of the prison. What kind of degrees can somebody get and graduate from inside the prison?
Aquí van a salir graduados de la licenciatura en administración de empresas para poder administrar, ser gerentes financieros o administrativos dentro de las empresas. Todavía no hay ninguna graduación. Estamos en el 8º ciclo. La carrera se compone.
We haven't had a graduation yet, but I'm sure they're all doing great.
10 ciclos y dentro de 1 año y medio, 2 años, vamos a poder tener y gozar de la primera cohorte de graduados.
And how many people will graduate the first graduation?
Aproximadamente 60 personas.
Hola. ¿Cómo están? Bien. ¿Qué están aprendiendo hoy día?
Las investigaciones de operaciones.
¿Quién tiene planes para graduar de esta universidad?
Todos. La verdad que todos tenemos la idea de querer.
Yeah, whom among you plans to graduate from the university? I'm sorry, were you expecting anyone to say, I'm not? I'm like, what do you... They're in prison, dog. If they don't graduate, they're gonna fucking be beaten and killed. Like, what are you talking about? Again, if this guy had done any amount of research prior to this trip, he would know that people go missing inside of these prisons all the time and wind up in mass graves.
llegar a culminar la carrera.
Inside each classroom, they are teaching the curriculum of the courses of the university. Then they have a library as well, and they have computer rooms where the people
I
are
have a
also
sudden
learning.
and overwhelming urge to smack this child in the journalism. Have some money.
Thank you for the
BWA.
$5 Dono Very Knifey Duck. I appreciate it. BWA as well.
More technical stuff, so that way they can work in places like a call center once they get outside of the prison.
This is the unique
Yes, call centers, famous for needing bachelor degrees.
situation that you can find one university in one jail.
How long have you been inside this prison for?
5 years and 4 months.
How much longer will you be here for?
8 years. 8 years.
And what crime did you commit?
The sexual situation.
Do you feel grateful that you're able to go to a prison where you can learn a new skill and eventually leave a better person?
I can say that all that we are learning here is for our life. We want to be a better persons. I will learn 2 years more, and I want to be better.
Hola. Buenas. ¿Cómo están? How long have you been here for?
10 years.
And what was the prison system like before Nayib Bukele?
Can I just say, like, some of these people, this guy has been in this prison for 10 fucking years. Like, he doesn't look old, man. Like he looks like he came into this prison at like 15.
Was president.
Well, we didn't have these kind of opportunities. For example, there was no university. His plan is to educate us and show us that there's like a better way to live our lives. And example, for me, I was outside. I'm here for selling drugs. So this is going to be real useful for me outside because it's going to be a way I could work in a call center, and what we're studying here is business administration, so it's gonna be real useful for me outside. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
You know, all these people keep talking about the need to go to university, to go to a call center, and it's just like, what? Like, if you have a degree in business administration, you don't work at a call center, generally speaking.
And were you here in jail before Nayib Bukele was president?
Yes, I was.
What was it like inside of the prison? How dirty was it? What was it like inside?
Well, yeah, it was dirty. It was disorder, and it wasn't like it is now.
What was some of the disorder you saw inside of this jail before Nayib Bukele became president?
Well, it was really dangerous for us in here because there were like groups that dominated.
Is it true that they used to bring in prostitutes and they could still control the gangs from inside of the jail?
Well, yes, that was true.
From the university, we headed to a completely different side of the prison where we had to hop in the car to go to the mechanic shop, and also we will receive a performance from the prison's own band named
There's something really perverse here with making these people like sing and dance on command. You know? Like there's something I can't even articulate about how awful this is. You know, like, not only are we going to imprison you, taking away your freedoms, not only are we going to force you to perform labor, we're also going to force you to just perform. Yeah, this is, again, like, I've made a lot of comparisons between, like, concentration camps during World War II and this, but this is like an Auschwitz orchestra moment. Exactly. My rear end. Exactly.
Color de Esperanza.
All of the cars they work on here inside of this mechanic shop are all government owned, whether it be an ambulance, another ambulance, or a police van. This helps the government stay self-sufficient and reduce costs because of the labor. Meanwhile, in other countries, as the prisoners...
To reduce costs because of the slave labor they use to fix their cars, man. Like, how are you not recognizing what you are saying and defending here? Yeah, we reduce the costs because you don't pay them anything because they're prisoners.
just sit inside their cells, waiting their time until they leave. They're putting the prisoners here to work, providing them with new opportunities, and helping them become something better and different by the time they leave. Here inside this workshop.
Yeah. The labor isn't for the primary benefit of the government to reduce costs. The labor really betters the prisoners. It's for them, really, first and foremost.
They have 8 different stations for
do they get paid? No, they don't get paid. They do it for the love of the game.
Mechanics here working on all the vehicles. 1 is the painting section, 2 is the motorcycle section, 3 is the air conditioning section, 4 is electric vehicles, 5 the car wash, 6 you have another painting section, 7 you have alignment and balance, and then the 8th one is for the larger vehicles where they do the repairs. Is there any worries that these people will then leave the prisons and then use these skills to follow through with more criminal activities, such as being able to rewire a car?
En realidad no. Porque aparte de lo que están aprendiendo en lo que son los talleres, también nosotros les damos otro tipo de charlas, como autocuido.
Oh, good. You give them pep talks about self-care. Oh, well, I guess if you give them pep talks about self-care, that's fine.
Y algunos valores que a ellos también les van a servir para dejar esta vida que han tenido anteriormente. Confiamos en que todo va a estar bien y que esto, al salir, ellos van a incorporarse a la vida laboral del país.
And how often are you guys receiving new prisoners here inside this prison?
Sí, todos los días recibimos nuevos internos.
And now for something I promised that you would never expect to see inside of a prison, a live performance by the prison's band.
This is the prison's band, Color Esperanza. Listo! Here we go, vamos, vamos, vamos!
Like, there's something, like, the ghoulishness, I feel like should be readily apparent, right? Like, this is like, to me, like watching, I don't know, a plantation owner, like, go out into the fields with, like, a bunch of his plantation owner friends and be like, Look, they're happy, ain't they? Look at how happy they are. Folks, give us a song. And then, like, making, like, your slaves sing you, like, songs. See, they're happy, ain't they? Like, it's crazy shit. This is like Confederate plantation Nazi shit. Give us a smile, sugar.
What up, YouTube channel? You're gonna see a bunch of dancers and a bunch of prisoners here inside of El Salvador. You won't see it anywhere else except for here on Big Shirley. What a time to be alive.
Like, he doesn't even really think of them as people. Like, he's talking over their performance. Fuck this asshole. Like, like, it's crazy.
This guy's coming in with the heat right here.
So that was... We're only halfway through this video. That was prison number 1, everybody.
Riverboat deck is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion, you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.